I used to be really big into urban exploration when I was younger. After I got older, I hitchhiked across the USA multiple times and stayed on the road for a little over 3 years. One of the most memorable experiences. South of Omaha, me and 4 other hippies made camp at night in a field of weeds next to a railroad track. We woke up in the morning around 6 a.m. and one of the guys was like, "Do you smell that? Smells like fucking kush." We all were like, sure, go back to sleep. But then another guy was like, "Holy shit, it does smell like kush." Annoyed, I get out of bed, get up and grab my flashlight. I shine it around and notice all the plants around us look sticky. Intrigued, I get closer and realize we camped in the middle of someone's gorilla grow patch of MJ. Sure enough, we all got up and started looking around and even found very well hidden water lines, barbed wire, etc. We started to think about grabbing some of it and taking it with us, but then we heard a gunshot far off and we all froze. Immediately after, we heard dogs barking and the sound of someone moving through the field. We started to rationalize that it was just someone hunting, but then there was another gunshot and it was much closer than the first. Suffice to say, we grabbed our shit and ran down the tracks, half of us barely clothed. I've got a few, scary but not creepy scary. We were exploring an old power plant. I was going into the control room while my friend continued down the hall. Suddenly, a part of the building collapsed. I immediately assumed something happened to my friend. Man, was I glad when I saw he was unharmed. While exploring an abandoned steel factory, we went around the corner into the next hallway when we came face to face with what appeared to be a security guard / creep. At first, my heart dropped until I saw it was only a dummy. Went to an abandoned hospital. There was a large square staircase spiraling up to the roof on the outside of the building, locked steel door at the bottom, so the only way up was to climb on the outside up to the first landing. My buddy boosts me up, I climb over, and there's a sleeping bag with a steak knife next to it on the landing. I call down, "We're definitely not alone here, dude." "No, but it's cool," says a voice behind me, scaring the shit out of me and causing me to jump and whirl around. There's a young dirty homeless looking guy standing there, coming down the stairs from above, hands up, palms out. "Didn't mean to scare you." He takes a seat on the stairs, so I carefully step on the handle of the steak knife, lean over the edge, and pull my friend up. We had planned to sit on the roof and drink beer, so we offer homeless guy a beer, which he gratefully accepts, and we shoot the shit on the landing for a while. We're talking about the city, the cops, traveling, life in general. He's basically a drifter, been in town for a week or so, but a nice guy. Things are going pretty well, when he asks, "You guys are human, right?" I fucking hate it when I meet people that end up being aliens, and you never know until you peel their skin off. They've been after me a long time, you know, they don't stop, they never stop. Sometimes I think I should just kill everyone to be safe. He's definitely not joking, and there's an uncomfortable silence as my friend and I realize this guy is fucking crazy. "Yeah man," I say, "we're human, we just wanted to check out the place and drink some beer. We're gonna go ahead and move on now, we definitely don't want any trouble." He just stares in silence, so we leave him the last beer, carefully back up to the railing, jump down and walk away very quickly, constantly looking back over our shoulders. The entire time, he's just standing there, still and silent, watching us leave. That place is still abandoned 5 years later and we've never been back. I'm not a believer in the supernatural, but humans can be deceptive and dangerous in ways you can't see coming. I was exploring a certain abandoned mill near a large city on the coast with a friend. We snuck in, messed around a bit, and realized that we only had one flashlight. Took turns, weird noises, dark inside because there's no power, evidence of homeless occupation and empty needles. Real horror game material. We come up stairway and turn a corner, ahead is a walkway bridge, aka, the way to the rest of the building. To the right is a pitch black room that doesn't feel very nice. As we walk towards the bridge, the flashlight picks out a sign that says, "To hell," and points towards this dark room. We didn't go in. Didn't feel right. "I know exactly where you were. I've been in the to hell room. It was just more of the same. There were no needles when I was there though. You must have been in after the opioid epidemic got bad." Edit. Oops, my memory was wrong. I was, apparently, in a different abandoned mill near a large city on the coast. My mill just has a torture chamber, not a portal to hell. This was the sign I saw. I had one creepy experience I already told, but my friends who always go exploring told me about this time. They were just following a trail that went into the hills, and after almost reaching the freeway, they ended up near an old closed-up train tunnel. They were able to squeeze through some loose fencing, and after wandering through with nothing of interest, they eventually came to a bunch of shipping containers. They told me that when they glanced inside, they saw a ton of guns and ammo in one and just a shit ton of heavy boxes in the rest. After a few minutes of checking it out, they heard voices from further down the tunnel coming closer, so they got out of there. They also said it almost smelled like the ocean towards the end, so the tunnel might have led out near the beach. Edit/update. Some added clarification for those who asked. The place they hiked to was somewhere between Santa Barbara and Oxnard in California, as they stopped on the 101 going southbound and started their hike and ended up returning to the car and going to Oxnard at the end of the day. They made a report to the police, but I haven't heard of anything coming of that on the news or otherwise. Also, some people said it might be smugglers, but given that the crates were unlocked, the tunnel was unguarded, and it was accessible to anyone who wandered out there, I doubt that's the case. If it was, they were either just about to take off or they were really stupid. So they came across black market weapon smugglers? Where did your friend see this? In America? I'm not sure if it was smugglers considering the poor security, but yeah, it was in California. It was somewhere between Santa Barbara and Oxnard, California off the 101. Beyond that, no idea. Went to a closed-up mental hospital in my city with some friends at night. Everything was cool until we got to the basement, where there were 5-meter wide and 4-meter high lit tunnels going far to both directions. We headed down one end and found a huge active generator, then we went the other way, and as we were about to hit another intersection, we saw 2 men wearing full green attire and face masks walking at the end of one of the corridors at 2 a.m. We got out of there real quick. This didn't happen to be in Northville, Michigan, did it? If so, it's really more of a teal. Southern Sweden. Did the guys see you or one of your friends? I'm assuming it was very quiet and they could have heard you running away. I don't think they saw us, but they 100% heard us because the running echoed through those halls pretty hard. I don't think that I've ever climbed a rain gutter with the speed I did that night. Exploring an abandoned construction site. It's a site out in redneck country that's got a bunch of old construction vehicles getting overgrown with plants and my girlfriend and I decided to go check it out, see what it's all about. We look around and don't see a whole lot. It's about to rain, so we decide to head out. As we are getting in my car, my girlfriend freezes and says, "There's a guy in the woods watching us." I shit myself and ask if she's sure. She repeats herself and says he saw her see him and laid flat on the ground to hide himself. Noped out of there real fucking quick. I live in a large African city which still has a fair amount of undeveloped/undevelopable space, and one rule to remember is that there is always someone else there that you may not see. There are people who sit alone, very quietly, in bushes or between boulders and other such places. They are, I think, harmless and don't do anything, but what they are doing has been a mystery to me for the 10 years I've been here. Most of them are too well dressed or well taken care of to be homeless. One thing that is annoying is that they stare at you, or at least they don't hide the fact that they are watching you. I swear if there was some completely inaccessible cave high up in a cliff here requiring professional scaling equipment to enter, they would find a local African guy just chilling inside with no discernible means of how he got there. Last winter I went into this abandoned parking lot under a closed shopping mall. It had 2 levels. The upper level had a bit of sunlight going in through the windows, but the lower level was pitch black. I made my way down this wide ramp that the cars would use and I decided to have a look at the bottom level. After turning my flashlight on, I noticed that the space was huge, much bigger than the upper level. I remember how the light danced through the many supporting pillars and casted vivid shadows. I said, "Hello. And, I'm just taking a look around, just to make my intentions clear," but was met with no response. So I decided to walk around for a bit, but couldn't see anything of interest, just a lot of junk, some empty old bottles, but nothing that might indicate someone living or hanging around there. The place seemed completely abandoned, however this uneasy feeling that someone might be hiding in the pitch black shadow of one of those pillars took the better of me and I climbed back up the ramp. I left taking different route and passed under an overhead clearing that snow had fallen through. Just as I was about to hop the fence and leave, I noticed that the patch of snow that had formed had footprints in it. I know this doesn't really sound horrifying when you read it, as the logical explanation was that some poor chap had probably taken shelter from the cold inside the lot, but still, being there creeped the hell out of me. If I were homeless and living in an abandoned place, I wouldn't respond to anybody saying, "I just want to take a look around." Seems like an easy way to make yourself a serial killer's next drifter victim. No thanks. When I was in college, a few friends and I went to this local abandoned hotel. It was a swanky place back in like the 50s, but had just been sitting around abandoned and fenced off ever since. We walked by and saw an open window on a second-story ledge and ended up finding an old wooden ladder nearby on the property. We went in and hung around and saw a bit of great graffiti. The whole place was trashed with actual garbage as well as bits of the building that were falling apart. We made it up the staircase to the 3rd floor, looking in each of the rooms. The area we were in used to be the housing for the staff of the hotel. The 3rd floor was covered in garbage from throughout the years. We got to the last room on the 3rd floor and looked in to find a lit candle with no one else around. Realizing we were not alone, we booked it out of there, and once we were outside, looked up to see someone watching us from one of the windows. Now, we went to college in a city with a significant homeless problem and assumed we had just stumbled onto someone's home, but still shit freaked us out. They cemented up the place after another explorer fell down an open elevator shaft and broke his legs, and it has recently been renovated and they are turning it into an apartment building. Not the creepiest find, but definitely freaked us out in the moment. Mineral Wells or Marshall, Texas? Negative. Philadelphia. The Divine Lorraine Hotel. Have posted this before on another thread. It wasn't exactly urban exploration, more like rural exploration. Anyway, hope y'all enjoy. I have posted this story before on a since deleted account, so if it sounds familiar, that's why. I grew up in a very rural area in the deep south, and spent most of my time riding my horse alone in the national forests and expansive private properties that bordered our house. There was an old abandoned house about 2 miles ride through the woods from me, and I often rode by it on my journeys through the woods. Sometimes I tied my horse up outside, went in, and explored inside it, but there was really nothing of interest. There was just trash and things like electric bills from the 80s. I think an old woman used to live there based on some pictures that I found. Time went on and I went away to college. My horse went with me and lived on a farm near the college. I no longer rode past this abandoned house. After graduating college, my horse and I moved back home for a little while, and I decided to go back and explore it again. So, I rode my horse the around 2 miles through the deep woods to get to this house, which is itself probably around 1,000 feet, on second thought might be less. I'm pretty shitty at estimating distances, from a lonely gravel road that cuts through the forest. It is very secluded and almost creepy. The house is about 3 miles from a paved road. I am less brave than I used to be, so when I entered the house I felt out of place and slightly scared. But I used my cell phone light to explore the rooms anyway. A lot was just as I remembered, but right as I was about to leave, I found a calf skeleton in the corner of the entry room. I have no idea how this calf got shut up inside the building. The doors were firmly shut when I approached it. Also, the screen door opened one way, while the actual door opened the other, so that it was impossible for both to be open at once for some creature to accidentally wander in. Furthermore, the nearest cow pastures are a good bit away from the house. I left the abandoned house with the image in my head of some deviant cruelly trapping a calf in there for sick purposes. Here are some images. I took the picture of the house as I was leaving, hence why the screen door is open. It was shut when I approached. Sorry it's long, I'm not a good writer and want to try convey the atmosphere of the place best I can. Me and a few friends decided to explore this abandoned child's hospital we'd heard about, which was in a small village about an hour from us. We get there and it's this huge plot of land, trees surrounding the whole place and the building in the center, real creepy looking. We had to climb up a wall to get inside, as we couldn't get in on the ground floor and had to go through a window that was ajar. After climbing through, the place is a mess, rubble everywhere, but it looked completely desolate as if no one else had been inside in years. Anyway, we basically went straight up to the roof, sat and had a few beers, then went home. I decided to go back a few days later with my girlfriend to have a proper look around because I wanted to explore it. We went in the building and immediately there was a different vibe unlike the other night. We jumped over the broken staircase to get to the ground floor. This was next to a large heavy-duty wooden door with multiple bolts and chains over it, and found a trapdoor with a ladder underneath which led to the basement. I convinced my girlfriend to come with me, but she wouldn't explore the basement when we were there, just stayed at the bottom of the ladder with her torch while I had a quick look around. That's when it got really scary. I walked past some machines into the small room, which was completely empty with the exception of a kicked-over chair and a noose hanging from a pipe directly above the chair. I shit myself, not literally, and turned round to leave, when on the wall there was red graffiti, not prepared to believe it was blood because there was a lot, saying, "Don't come back." Needless to say I haven't been back. My girlfriend told me after she felt like I was gone for about an hour, when I was only 5 or 10 minutes, and she kept hearing whispers from the dark corridors and the trapdoor fell shut above her at one point, for no apparent reason. Very scary place, would love to go back with more people, but damn that shit me up. Can you ask your girlfriend how she didn't start screaming bloody murder when she was already scared to begin with? Standing in a pitch black basement, hearing whispers coming from the black and then the trapdoor that stayed open for the first few minutes suddenly closes. She had balls. I think she was probably too terrified to do anything but stand there. Looking back, I feel slightly bad for leaving her there. This isn't really a scary or horrifying story, but more of a dodged bullet story. Me, my best friend, and my cousin like to explore abandoned buildings and structures. At the time, we needed an abandoned location for a web series we were doing. We walked across a large, barren field to get to an old, worn-down house. There was even a small old barn right next to it. It seemed like the perfect location. We walked around the barn and I was filming because I wanted to review the footage later to show the other people involved in the series who couldn't make it. After we looked through a large portion of the barn, I stopped recording and we headed out. The next thing to explore was the house. However, there was something off about it. It certainly looked abandoned, but it didn't feel like it was abandoned. I noticed an orange extension cord, saw it led to a small window near the ground. I could tell it was the basement and the light was on. I looked over at my friend and cousin and told them that I was pretty sure someone lived here. There was no garage and no car, but the light in the basement immediately told me that someone lived here. My cousin for some reason thought nothing of it and was going to try the door when, sure enough, a truck started coming down the driveway. So here we are, 3 teenagers standing right next to someone's house during the late afternoon with someone driving down the road. Me and my cousin immediately started to speed walk away from the house and towards the barren field. The truck pulled up near us and a middle-aged Mexican man got out. He asked us what we were doing and I said that we were walking through the field, we're walking to a nearby neighborhood. He looked at us for a bit and we started to back up and went inside. That immediately put an end to our exploration that day. The thing that makes this story one of the biggest dodged bullets is, what if my cousin broke into the house? What if I didn't notice the extension cable? Imagine all 3 of us in his house when he came home. I guess no one has any reason to believe me, but a few years back, a friend and I were snooping around some allotments on the outskirts of our village, in the UK. It was about 11 p.m, so it was pretty dark. Not a completely pitch black dark, but dark to the point where, if you were to look at a tree around 30 meters away, all you'd see was its silhouette, but up close, you could see enough to navigate by. The allotment was surrounded on 3 sides by deep hedgerows, with trees and then fields beyond. I'm always super vigilant in these sort of situations, so generally I'll stop regularly, and just listen, you know? Just stand as still as possible, and strain my ears for people approaching, etc. My friend had crouched down, around 3 meters from me, to see what sort of plants were growing, and was pulling at a vegetable that was growing in the soil. Whilst I was listening, I began to hear a noise coming from the back corner of the allotments, maybe 20 to 30 meters away or so. The noise is really hard to describe. It was like a low-pitched sound, that sounded vividly like someone rampantly speaking in tongues, but it was odd, it kinda seemed smaller than a human voice, but deeper. Like an animal, but speaking in tongues. All different vowel and consonant sounds rolling over. It's really hard to describe, but I can hear it vividly when I try to remember it. My friend and I had a system of hand signals, but of course, he was focused on this plant. I was utterly convinced that this was going to be one of those things you hear or see, but by the time you've got someone's attention, the sound has stopped and no one believes you for the rest of your life. I didn't want to move, risking drawing attention to myself, so I just stood, stock still, and made a short, sharp hiss-type sound, with my tongue. My friend looked up, and I signaled in the direction of the noise. It carried on. My friend and I just stood and listened, in silence, for about a minute, before it started to increase in volume. That was the point where we decided we'd done enough investigating. It carried on as we left. As it's a few years ago now, my sane head just says it was some kind of animal. A fox or something. But I spend a lot of time out at night, away from built-up areas, and I've never heard a noise that I could even morph into that. It was just this odd babble of what sounded like made-up words, etc., but coming from a voice box that didn't sound human. At the time we had all sorts of theories. We knew it could have just been an animal, but there's also a lot of suspicious government installments in the area. Talk of a lot of hidden tunnel networks and, if you're out at night, you'll often see a lot of strange lights over the hill in the distance. I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but my account above is true. Perhaps it was a fox? They can make some pretty creepy arse sounds, particularly if you're not able to see it's a fox. I actually hear foxes screaming quite a lot around where I live. If I'm right, it's the female foxes that make some of the weirdest, most human-like, screaming sounds. My girlfriend has been caught out in the past when she's come to me saying she can hear screaming outside. It's very human-like. The sound I heard was much deeper and consistent, almost without taking breaths. The syllables, etc., were so clearly defined. Very creepy. Under a church in my local town, there is this green door covering with no handle because it's a wooden real fake door. Legit though, it's a door with no hinges, etc. It's meant to just stop access into there. I'd like to mention the door is on the back side of the church bit and outside the church grounds. There is no road near it. One day me and my mates saw someone had smashed the wooden door thing to pieces. Typical teens, we wanted to explore, but me being me, I said we should research it. In our town, there are quite a lot of tunnels linking houses, shops, etc., that are usually chained off, but a lot of them are still open and haven't been explored. This was the first one where we wouldn't have to ask a shop owner to have a look. I found that there were apparently all these ghosts, including the Blue Drum Boy who got killed during a war in the early 11th century. My friend believes in all the paranormal shit, so he got his cross and ghost shit ready. I packed a 500 lumen torch to light up the place and had a backpack of batteries, a walkie-talkie each, and all the other essential shit. Early hours, pitch black, we went in. Everyone was completely silent as we crept down the stairs. Suddenly, we all realized there was a 90-degree turn where we couldn't see the right. Everyone was shit scared to go first, so my mate lit a red light flare and threw it in. Then, we all together walked in. There was like a huge room with another doorway. We looked around the first room, finding needles and blood. We carried on through the doorway and found a grate that had a ladder off it. Obviously, we were buzzing and thought what a great motherfucking idea to cut through the lock and climb down the ladder. 3 out of the 4 of us were down when the larger of us all started climbing. It was rickety and kind of rusted, but it just broke when he was halfway. The exit from the ladder was a tunnel completely dry and pitch black, but he fell and shattered both ankles. Oh, and there was a bad stench. Yeah, bad situation as we couldn't get back up there, ladder broke, and my mate couldn't walk and he was the biggest guy. We had to carry him. Basically, when me and one other mate carried on, leaving the others to find help as walkie-talkies got no reply, we walked past rotting rats, life rats and a shit ton of bloodstains at one point. After about 30 minutes of walking, so about a mile and a half, we found a crossroad. Straight left or right. Basically, left was dead end, right was dead end, but straight had a ladder. The ladder was rusted and we were scared to climb it. I climbed up and found someone with a needle in their arm dead. Their face was rotting and I was about to throw up. The ladder led to identical rooms but no lock on the grate. I went back down the ladder, got the others and came back. We managed to get my larger mate up and out and took him to the hospital. We couldn't say where we went or talk about the dead guy because it would be trespassing. Why not report the dead body anonymously? They may have family out there. I was 15 and shit scared. You're British, right? If you hadn't broken any locks you'd be fine. The part where you did that, you broke the law. Otherwise you used no force and were simply exploring without intent to commit crime. I'm British, yes. I think I'm going to do an anonymous tip-off.